In this series of conversations, we meet Liv Larsson, mediator, author, and longtime teacher of nonviolent communication. For over 2 decades, Liv has worked at the intersection of conflict, empathy, and transformation, helping people navigate some of life's most difficult conversations. But this is not just about technique. It's about what happens inside us when we choose to stay present. When we meet resistance with curiosity or anger with listening, together we explore how conflict can become a space for growth rather than avoidance, and what it really means to hold space for others without losing touch with ourselves. Liv shares stories from the field, reflections on power, and the inner practices that help her return to empathy, even when it's hard. Whether you're familiar with nonviolent communication or simply wondering how to engage more honestly and bravely in moments of tension, this series of episodes offers thoughtful and grounded invitations into a deeper kind of being. Let's begin.
All right, let's continue our conversation. And as far as I remember, we talked about shame and specifically the difficulties it brings. So what does it take to be conscious or aware of shame? Because it seems like if we're not aware of shame, we can't, it kind of takes us. So I'm curious to hear more about how do you see, or what do you see that it takes from an individual, from a person to actually, because I'm guessing that for some people, it's a non-doable thing. It's like, so could you talk about that? Like what does it take to be able to explore or navigate shame consciously?
Yeah, so to me it was an aha moment when I realized that small kids will be saying, leave angry. It's like I am my anger or I am my fear. At a certain age or a certain developmental stage, it's like there's an identification with me and the emotion. And as we grow, we start to become kind of more aware that, I can actually make a difference between me and the emotion. I can say, I feel anger. So that's kind of the first step, to not believe this is me. But there is a little bit of distance where I can say, I can feel anger. So that's like on the way there. And then on top of that, it's when we become kind of curious about that distance, like what does it mean if I can name what I feel, what I experience? And does that mean I can change that? Those thoughts that I have that is part of creating my emotions, can they be different than the ones that says, oh, this is shameful, please run away, or this is shameful, try to hide it?
So you're saying that being aware in the sense that I'm not identify myself with the emotion or the feeling, that like I am feeling it, but I am not it. I'm not
Mhm.
shame, but I'm feeling shame or I'm experiencing shame.
Mm-hmm. That's one first step, or one step of distance between the experience and what I name as myself or me. But then there's also that ability to reflect on my thoughts and change them. So instead of thinking this is, people are gonna dislike me if I let them know that I've done this or that this happened. So I try to never name the things that I feel ashamed about. And when I become more able to reflect on my thoughts, I can go, oh, I know I feel shame. And even if something inside of me says, this is super dangerous, you will be an outcast if you let people know, this is not really true. I can see that with a little bit of distance. It's not going to be a catastrophe. Uh, I feel shame, and that's probably making the situation seem worse than it is. And then I can take a breath and I can kind of assess if it's actually safe to tell someone instead of staying alone with it, try to pretend that everything is fine.
So being aware or being able to be aware of what kind of thoughts is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And even be and the next step being even able to say, oh, I feel shame and I know that sometimes I communicate or behave in ways that I don't like when I feel shame. And I want to make sure I make a conscious choice of what I do next. And then maybe even being able to, like, as one next step, to say, oh, this is my friend. It's not going to be dangerous, even if they see that I'm not perfect. And I can name that I feel this awkward. I feel shame about what I said or did. And so it's almost like creating different kind of steps. First, being able to reflect on my feelings, my thoughts, and then being able to choose thoughts that helps me be with the situation.
I'm I've heard you say that quite a lot of times, like not being perfect.
Hmm.
So that seems to be something that is important for the shame, or it's like central to it.
Yeah.
So like we all want to do our bests, and sometimes we could call that being perfect. But why is it so kind of hot when it comes to shame? Like why is it so important to be perfect?
Mm.
Or
I love that thought because for me, a simplified way of saying it is that perfectionism is nurtured by shame. It's like driven by shame. So I try to be perfect so that no one ever will see my imperfectionism. And I'm not in the, when I'm running to be perfect, I'm not realizing that shame is running me, shame is running my life. Instead of me choosing to go for mastery, choosing to go for, oh, I want to be really good at this. And I also want to be able to tolerate moments when, oh, that was not a good way of doing this today, or this was a mistake on the way for me learning about whatever subject uh, that I wanted to learn. And the more we can tolerate that awkward, uncomfortable state and take a breath and say, this is really, there's really strong discomfort here. And kind of reminding ourselves we won't die, even if it will show I'm not perfect. That's such a liberation. It's like new ground. I'm I'm creating new space for myself, new living space for myself.
so would you say that there could we could divide a search for perfection into two kind of tracks? One is that I'm I'm trying to be perfect to avoid the shame of not being perfect, or I'm trying to learn as much as I can about something, not to avoid shame, but because of some other reason, maybe passion for whatever it is, cooking,
Mm.
skiing, or learning to navigate shame or whatever.
Yeah, or even
Uh,
to contribute to others.
so there's that avoidance. It sounds like that is another pearl to look for, kind of
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
aware of when am I avoiding something or when I am going like striving towards something.
Yes, and this is also an interesting place when we start recognizing that shame is about me living up to what I value, like living with integrity. And then that integrity will probably include that, oh, I don't expect others to be perfect. So can I then be more kind to myself on my way of striving to become and to learn? Can I actually give myself more of of a relaxation around the parts where I'm not perfect around?
Mm. Maybe some listeners to this conversation, maybe they have this experience that they are becoming aware, or they're aware that, or they're starting to question, why is it important to be or do in a certain way?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember um, when I started to hear things that I've heard from other people as other people's voices rather than truths. Like, you shouldn't be like that, or you should do it like this way. So I started to question, you could call it like conditioning or cultural norms, or uh,
Mm.
so when we are taken, or when we are kind of believing what we have learned, how we're supposed to be or act, or when we're starting to question that, in the sense to kind of figure out, what do I want? How do I want to live? Separate from what my parents maybe taught me, or society. So thinking of it in that way, what is like, is there a difference in shame, in our experience of shame, when we're kind of bathing in or believing in our upbringing, or cultural norms, and when we have started to question them, to kind of figure out, what do I like? What is important for me? Like, is the
Yeah.
question clear?
Yeah, well, there are many questions in what you're asking, because one thing is that as long as I'm following the norms or the path that I'm given from my culture, and I'm kind of, then maybe I never feel shame because I never stretch. I never go beyond what is normal, accepted, and okay. So it might be that I'm not aware of that shame is there. But then there are moments when I'm, as you're saying, when I'm start realizing that, oh, maybe there are more choices than following the norms. Maybe that is someone else's ideas of how to live life, and I'm actually longing for this and that. And then there might be shame. So whenever we take a risk, when we go traveling or when we go into new situations, we are likely to feel more shame because we kind of calibrating what's okay here, what's normative here in this group. How are you supposed to behave here? And then it might be like, oh, it wasn't comfortable, so I'm not never going to do this again. And we don't realize that it is because of that inner process. But then sometimes we also sidestep. Uh, Sometimes when I work with groups or individuals, I hear people say, well, I used to feel a lot of shame, but I don't anymore. And it comes from a place where I realized that this was the norms, and now I don't believe that it needs to be my norms. It was my parents or my teachers, and then we're kind of going for the opposite of that, like almost like a rebellion towards the norms that was set. And to me, there is something missing in that approach. When I have had so many beautiful moments with people that says that, oh, I realized that I do feel shame because this is not accepted in my family. And they can kind of pause with that and kind of look at that as in the same way as they look at a beautiful piece of jewelry, and they kind of look at it and say, wow, this is how I, all these years, how I kept belonging to my family or my norm, my culture, or, and now I see that I don't need to fully have that, but I can see the beauty of having had that help, that internal parent, or that internal, that autopilot that kept me alive and kept me accepted as long as I needed it. And that is a very different place than rebellion. Because rebellion, and I know all about rebellion because I'm very good at that. Because that kind of makes me cold and cool and not kind of sensitive to how I really want to live. So it's not about getting rid of the shame, but it's about really waiting for the moment when it's transformed, and then having moments when it's not there. Not because it wasn't there before, but because I have a relaxed relationship to it, or I feel safe with the people that they will accept me no matter what. So there are many, many different levels of this as well.
Hmm. This thing with the rebellion, so there's a difference between rebelling against the shame and doing things than kind of being aware of it, as you said, looking at a piece of jewelry and then being curious about it. So is the curiosity the missing part from the rebellion, like the rebellious person or the rebellion uh, knows what it doesn't want, and then it kind of avoids it through the rebellion. Is that
Yeah, and there is one part of that, when I come to places in myself or with people I work with, and we come to look at shame as something beautiful and something we are curious about, there is something also that happens with my compassion. It's like I can start remembering maybe my mother, that, oh, that was why she behaved that way towards me, because she felt probably that discomfort of shame, or my teacher, or my partner, or someone around me. I can start extending the understanding of the discomfort. And for me, that is not going to happen when I rebel against shame and I say, I'm not going to feel shame anymore because it's just about norms. But when I'm not letting shame rule my life fully, but I still can notice it when it's there, for me, that's such a gift when it comes to developing compassion, empathy, uh, understanding towards myself and others.
but it sounds to me like I could learn how to empathize just as a perfect art, like to avoid, like I'm learning nonviolent, I'm learning the technique of empathizing just to avoid something.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing you now saying like, oh, so I can also, if I become friend and curious with my own shame, that kind of extends into a genuine curiosity about other people. And we could call that empathy and warmth, like compassion for others. Being a more non-technical, not like following some steps.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
do you see? Do you agree with that, or
I
what do I
agree
want to
with
know? Yeah.
that. No, I agree with that. It's a sense of, oh, I see how much we are the same. I see that tender person that you are, and it's the same kind of, it is tough sometimes to be human. That kind of understanding and warmth, and it's not coming from above, and it's not coming from a technique. It's coming from uh, seeing humanity, uh, just noticing that it's not so easy to be human sometimes. And that love, even that can bring that relaxation, is creating a totally different communication pattern, I'd say. And I can still use things from nonviolent communication to kind of find words and so on, but that's not the goal at all, to use certain kind of words. But it's connecting on that human level where I can see you and you can see me.
I like when you say it's sometimes hard or difficult to be human, because I've had quite many conversations with successful people, successful in the sense that they are uh, successful in their work life, that they are uh, entrepreneur, or they are working as a CEO, or so in their work life they're very successful, and they don't have the conversation with me about how successful they are, but they are actually struggling at home with their partner.
Mm.
So it seems to me like being able to rebel in the work life can give you success, because you might take that call that others people won't, and you might take risks, so you might get quite a bigger payoff if you're good at rebelling in the work life. But in the private, like close relationships, rebelling is not the recipe for intimacy with your partner.
Yeah.
And that's often where those conversations goes towards, like, how do I have a good intimate relationship with my partner?
Mm.
Yeah,
Intimacy is, when I let someone that close, physically, mentally, emotionally, this other person will see me and they will see my flaws. They will see all the imperfectionism of me. And if I'm not ready to let someone see me in that way, because I will feel shame, or I don't even know that I am scared of feeling shame, of course I try to rebel, or I withdraw. I no longer talk about myself, or I don't let someone physically close. So yes, intimacy and rebellion is very like opposites in
it's
many different
like
ways.
water and oil, you could say.
Yeah, water and oil, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And with that, when we are also, we might go then to uh, work because it's less discomfort. But then many people then work too much. They lose their family, they lose maybe their home, but they might even lose their health. And because the stress that comes from always showing up, being perfect, is super stressful.
So if the norm is to be successful, and that could be translated working more than anyone else, always, you know,
Yeah.
never finishing, so that could be costly, not being able to kind of listen to one's needs.
And there's another part of this as well. And this is a complicated, complex matter, but I still want to mention it. It's, sometimes it's really hard to keep rebelling, to keep that cool and superficial and kind of just be ready to let go of everything, just go for the goal. So people start using alcohol or drugs or different kinds of behaviors that will keep them in place. Uh, they so getting to know shame can also be a way. I've seen many people who've realized that, whoa, I am drinking this much because whenever I stop, I cannot rebel against, I cannot brush off the pain from another broken relationship. So I drink not because I drink because I'm, that's what I do, but no, I drink to avoid shame. And so there's also a piece of the puzzle in that.
So it seems like shame is like, I don't know if the most uncomfortable, but really uncomfortable experience. So not being able to navigate or tolerate that, that makes us avoid, like we talked in our previous conversation with the need compass and the different behavioral directions. Yeah. But so what, it seems like shame is connected to more of my identity. And when I can disconnect the identity, then I'm set free in some sense. Can you say something about shame and self-image? Or
Yeah, and it's a paradox. It is, as you say, it's like when I'm not so self-identified with being perfect, all that personal individual work is one thing, but then we have this part of shame, that shame is a social experience. Like I can feel shame about doing something and I'm alone in my kitchen and I eat 5 more cookies and then I go like, oof, I feel shame. If someone would have seen me, I would have felt shame. And nobody is there, but I can still experience the shame of being seen. Maybe I
so you,
stole some other person's cookies. They were supposed to have 2 and I had more. So it's about identity, but it's also about the social part in the same time.
so are you saying that shame can also how to put this? It's like if I'm alone and I feel shame, in some way I'm still connected to other people, even though I'm alone in that room, because shame is kind of connecting me to a social context of
Yeah,
like culture norms, how to behave, how not to behave, kind of.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. And that is why also I notice for myself, but with others that I work with, that people, when they start embracing shame, it becomes easier to hear when someone communicates criticism to them. So even if they get criticism and they feel ashamed, when they can be with that shame, they can also process that criticism with the person that is involved in the situation, because it is, yes, it's about me processing it, but it is also about me being more able to hear the other and see what does that do with me if this person has criticism about me in this field. So to me, that's one of the most interesting things, that it's so personal, it's so close, it's so much about my identity, and it's so much about me in the world, me in the group.
So in your book, um, the latest book, I forgot now the name of it.
Unmasking shame.
Thank you. Um, you write about how we kind of grow over time as adults, or and that, and also our relationship to shame changes.
Hmm.
So how could you point out some kind of key thresholds or something that we could kind of reflect on our own life? Like, have I kind of stumbled on that threshold, or have I kind of managed to grow beyond it? And so, and how do I know like some road signs on this journey of relating to shame?
Yeah, so I would start at the end of seeing, do I have the relationships I want? Do I have I let people close enough for my to my liking? Or is there something there that I want to work on? Do I go for my dreams? I think we talked about that in last interview about someone's wanting to sing and they don't take the chances that they get. So am I able to say yes to things that I long for, even if I am pretty sure I will not be perfect when I say my yes? Or will I be able to say no, even if people criticize me for being selfish or whatever? Do I live fully the life I want to live? And if not, shame is one of the ways, looking at shame is one of the ways where I can start having more access to that, to the way I want to live.
But hold on.
But
The most people I know would, if they would be honest, they would say, well, I don't do what I want fully. I'm not saying no. I want to be nice. I don't want to be mean. Or so it sounds like those are your points. It's kind of, the bar is pretty high. so,
it's
so, so, do you agree?
yes, yeah.
So
And
can we have a warm-up bar, like something like you want to have a win before you take on the big struggle, so to say. So give a small win. So how do I know I'm on my way? Maybe not finished, if we can finish this adventure, but like being aware or curious or those kind of things. Are those? Yeah. So.
Well, one thing is that when I'm starting to realize that, whoa, I have capacity to pause, to name what's going on, even if it's not, even if it's awkward, I can even let people know. I remember someone that called me and said, I need help because I read my teenager's diary, my teenager's diary, and I realized I shouldn't have done that. And that knowing that you can actually ask for support when you have done things you regret, when you when you um, when you don't need to show up perfect, but you can let someone know that I did something that was imperfect, and I want your support, I want your empathy, I want your ideas of how to mend this trust, um,
So
all of
when
those.
so when we're more interested in repairing our mistake than looking like we never did a mistake.
Yeah, that is a good way of describing it. Yeah. When
Yeah.
we're more interested in the relationships, in the communication, in the living life than to show up as something from a museum.
You see. All right. So we talked more in depth about shame and what it takes from us. So if you could give some kind of reflection or some kind of advice for the ones who want to practice or become more friend or curious with their shame. So what would be some things to think about and to try?
Well, some of the things that I work with in my trainings is I rely heavily on three needs of belonging, of acceptance, and dignity. And it's not because it's only those needs or qualities in life that is connected to shame. But I've noticed that when we start recognizing how much we have a need for belonging, how much we have a need for acceptance, and how much we have a need for dignity, as humans, they're kind of guiding us through life. When we can start seeing those patterns, then something happens. So I ask people to write a journal for some weeks around this, or like recognizing. And one is, we both like cross country skiing, and when I in the winter, I go out of the house and I ski, and usually there is no one around because we live in the forest. And I ski and somewhere in some hill or somewhere I fall. And the first thing that goes through my head is usually, did someone see me? Especially if I fall in a big time way, like my head first, and I get snow out of my ears. And so before I even check, did I break a leg? Did I break a ski pole? Did something bad happen to me physically? I have some kind of thought that checks out, how am I emotionally? How am I socially? How am I seen? And it's a treasure to 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 know, what are these moments for you? Because when I take a breath there, I can say, I belong. I have a need for belonging, and I do belong. And I have a need for dignity. I look like a fool when I fall over. Yeah, I want to be dignified. I'm human. And then it's like, every time I remember that, I I have almost like pathways that are easier to walk on towards those needs, instead of the opposite.
But is that because you identify yourself as a skier? So you want to be seen as a good, competent skier.
Yes,
And
that is
if
one thing.
and if someone from a place where skiing is not like the top religion, then they would not have that first question. They would look at their pulse or check their leg.
Well, I have
Or
checked this
what do you think? Yeah.
yes, I've checked this with many trainings all over the world, and people know what the first thought is that goes through my head, even if they're not cross-country skiers, because they recognize it from walking on the street and tripping over a stone and falling over. They recognize that they feel shame, just making themselves, an embarrassment in front of other people. So they recognize that step. I even had someone that I worked with that fell over, slipped on a wet floor. And this was a person that, has worked a lot with himself and has a big, lots of tools. And when I checked, are you okay? This person says, sure, I'm okay. No problem. Didn't hurt myself. And then 2 days passed, and then he actually showed me, and he was all blue on the side. He had fallen so badly, probably broken a rib, and he was all blue. And he only then had processed it and realized, I felt so much shame over being, like weak or a loser or a fool, that I just pretended that I was okay. And I think we do that all the time. And then instead of saying, yeah, I feel so stupid, I fell over, can you help me? And, am I still accepted? Sure, I am.
So navigating my own dignity, and also navigating how much do I want to ask for help? How dependent do I want to be? Like what is necessary? I don't want to be over dependent, but I do want ask for help if I need it. So yeah, I
Yeah,
can have a
yeah.
sense of this.
And
Cool.
our place in the group is quite important, and it's been for hundreds and thousands of years for humans. It has been super important to be part of a group, because that's how we survived. Like those generations. Still it is, but then when we live like 15, 20, 30 people in a group, and if someone started behaving in a way that would be threatening to that group, they might be thrown out. And in that time, there were no 7-Elevens and no hotels. And
We were really dependent on the group.
yes. And that,
In a way, life and death way, more than now. Now it might be more of a psychological or
yeah, well, we still are very dependent on each other, but it's not as direct as before.
yeah.
There's still a fridge and a place to go and buy food, even if I'm not part of a group directly.
Yeah.
But then emotionally, it might be as hard. Hmm. It feels like when we're talking, it feels like we can just open more and more boxes.
Yeah, I want to share what box I want to open for our next conversation, so you can prepare. Because we've been talking now, as we do quite a lot, we use words, and we haven't touched on that. Like the words we choose or the words we use, how does that influence our relationship or our to shame or to conflict or so I don't want to say more about that now because we need to go for today. But I think that would be probably my next questions. Like the words, how do we use language?
Interesting.
So you want to join?
Sure.
So let's not say goodbye
I'm
then.
in.
Let's say see you next time. And if you're listening to this conversation, me and Liv, we are having these conversations, and hopefully you find them meaningful. So see you next time. Yeah?
See you. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation with Liv Larsson. If you want to learn more about Liv's work, upcoming trainings, or dive deeper into nonviolent communication, you'll find her at www.friaraliv.com. You'll find links to Liv's books mentioned in this episode in the show notes, along with more information about our international mediation program and the Reimagine Communication program, perfect if you're looking to deepen your practice in mediation and integrate nonviolent communication more fully into your life. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious, stay connected,